The messenger arrived at sunset. Seneca was in his garden, tending to his vines. His hands, weathered and marked by age, moved gently through the leaves. At 70 years old, he had learned that the simple act of cultivating life could bring more peace than all the treasures of empire. He saw the imperial guard approach from a distance. Their armor caught the dying light, flashing like warnings. His wife, Pompeia Paulina, stood beside him. She clutched his arm. "Lucius!" Her voice trembled. Seneca placed his hand over hers. "Warm, steady. Whatever comes, my love, we have lived well. That is enough." The lead guard dismounted. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed something else. Pity, perhaps, or shame. "Lucius Annaeus Seneca." The guard's voice was formal, hollow. "The Emperor Nero requires your presence. You are ordered to—" He paused, swallowing hard. "You are ordered to take your own life." The words hung in the air like poison. Pompeia gasped. The other servants who had gathered fell to their knees, weeping, but Seneca remained still. His face showed neither shock nor fear. It was as if he had been expecting this moment his entire life. And perhaps he had. We cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. External events have no power over our inner peace unless we grant it to them. To understand this moment, you must understand the relationship between Seneca and Nero. It was a bond forged in hope and destroyed by madness. 20 years earlier, Seneca had been appointed as young Nero's tutor. The boy was just 12 years old, the stepson of Emperor Claudius, and his mother, Agrippina, had grand ambitions. She wanted her son on the throne, and she wanted the greatest minds of Rome to shape him. Seneca saw potential in the boy: intelligence, sensitivity, a love for art and poetry. He taught Nero about virtue, about justice, about the Stoic path of living according to nature and reason. "Remember, Nero," Seneca would say during their lessons, "power is not something to be hoarded. It is a responsibility. The true emperor serves his people, not himself." For a time it seemed to work. When Nero became emperor at 17, the first 5 years of his reign were called the Quinquennium Neronis, the 5 good years. Seneca guided the young emperor's hand. Together, they reduced taxes, gave the Senate more power, and showed mercy to Rome's enemies. Rome flourished, but power is a peculiar poison. It works slowly, seeping into the cracks of character until it transforms the person entirely. Nero began to change. The artistic boy became obsessed with his own performances, forcing senators to watch him sing for hours. The sensitive youth became paranoid, seeing conspiracies everywhere. The student of philosophy became a tyrant who trusted no one. Seneca watched with growing horror as his student unraveled. Nero murdered his own mother, Agrippina. He kicked his pregnant wife, Pompeia, to death in a fit of rage. He executed anyone he perceived as a threat. Rome's golden age curdled into nightmare. And through it all, Seneca remained. He advised, he counseled, he tried desperately to be the voice of reason, whispering in the ear of madness. But here's the question that haunted Seneca every single day. By staying close to Nero, was he preventing worse atrocities, or was he simply enabling a monster. This is the weight Seneca carried. This is the guilt that pressed on his chest as he tried to sleep. He had helped create this emperor. He had taught him philosophy while failing to instill virtue, and now Rome bled for his failure. We are responsible for our intentions and efforts, not outcomes. We cannot control how others interpret or apply what we teach them. Our duty is to act with virtue regardless of results. 3 years before that sunset summons, Seneca had tried to leave. He approached Nero in the palace, finding him in his private theater, surrounded by sycophants applauding his latest performance. "Caesar," Seneca began carefully, "I wish to speak with you." Nero waved the others away with irritation. "What is it, teacher? Come to lecture me again about temperance?" "No, Caesar. I come to ask for retirement. I am old, tired. I wish to spend my remaining years in study and contemplation. I wish to return my wealth to you, all of it, the estates, the gold, everything you have generously given me. Let me live simply as a philosopher should." It was a strategic move. By offering to return his wealth, Seneca hoped to deflect accusations that he had enriched himself through his proximity to power. He wanted to show Rome and Nero that he desired nothing but peace. Nero's eyes narrowed. "You wish to abandon me?" "Not abandon, Caesar. Simply step back. You no longer need a tutor. You are emperor. You are—" "Do you think I'm stupid?" Nero's voice rose, echoing in the empty theater. "Do you think I don't see what you're doing? If Rome's greatest philosopher retires from my court, what message does that send? That even Seneca cannot stomach serving me? That is not my intention." "Your intention?" Nero laughed bitterly. "You taught me that intentions mean nothing. Actions are what matter. And your action would be abandonment. Your action would be a public denouncement of my reign." "Caesar, please." "Request denied." Nero turned away. "You will remain. You will continue to lend your name and reputation to my rule. And if you truly wish to practice your Stoic indifference, then you will do so without complaint." Seneca left that meeting understanding a terrible truth. He was a prisoner. His gilded cage was comfortable, but it was still a cage. Nero would not let him go because Seneca's presence provided legitimacy. As long as the great Stoic philosopher remained at court, Nero could claim some connection to wisdom and virtue. But staying meant complicity. It meant his name would forever be linked to Nero's crimes. The trap was complete. Over the next 3 years, Seneca withdrew as much as he could. He stopped attending court regularly. He spent more time in his villa writing. His essays from this period are filled with a profound melancholy, a sense of being trapped between duty and disgust. In his essay On the Shortness of Life, written during this time, he wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested." Was he speaking to Rome or to himself? Sometimes we find ourselves in situations we did not choose and cannot easily escape. The Stoic practice is to maintain our inner freedom even when external freedom is restricted. In the year 65 AD, a conspiracy formed. A senator named Gaius Calpurnius Piso gathered a group of Roman elites, military commanders, and even praetorian guards. Their plan was simple: assassinate Nero during the games and install Piso as emperor. They called it the Pisonian Conspiracy, and it was ambitious, involving dozens of Rome's most powerful citizens. Seneca knew nothing about it, but that didn't matter. When the conspiracy was discovered, betrayed by a freed slave seeking reward, Nero's paranoia exploded into full madness. He saw traitors everywhere. The executions began immediately. Senators were dragged from their homes. Officers were arrested. Anyone with even a distant connection to the conspirators was a suspect. And Nero's eyes turned to his old teacher. Think about it from Nero's twisted perspective. Seneca was the most respected man in Rome. His writings were read throughout the empire. If anyone could legitimize a new emperor, it was Seneca. And hadn't Seneca tried to leave? Hadn't he withdrawn from court? Wasn't that suspicious? The logic of paranoia doesn't require evidence. It only requires fear. A member of the conspiracy, under torture, mentioned Seneca's name, not as a participant. There was no evidence of that, but simply as someone who might have known. That was enough. Nero sent his guards. Now we return to that garden at sunset. The guard delivered his message. You are ordered to take your own life. Under Roman law, when an emperor condemned someone from the elite class, he often granted them the mercy of choosing their own method of death. It was considered an honor, a way to preserve some dignity. You could open your veins in a bath, take poison, or fall on your sword. Refusal meant public execution, property confiscation, and shame for your family. It was a choice that was not really a choice. Seneca looked at the guard. On what charges? The guard shifted uncomfortably. The conspiracy, sir. I see. And what evidence has been presented? I don't know, sir. I only deliver the emperor's will. Seneca nodded slowly. He understood. In Nero's Rome, evidence was irrelevant. The emperor's suspicion was the only conviction that mattered. He could have protested. He could have demanded a trial. He could have groveled and begged for mercy. But Seneca had spent his entire life teaching one fundamental truth. We are not our circumstances. We are how we respond to our circumstances. This was his final exam. After decades of writing about Stoicism, teaching about virtue, and counseling others on how to face death with courage, now he had to prove he believed his own philosophy. Very well, Seneca said calmly. Tell the emperor I will comply. Pompeia Paulina let out a sob. No, Lucius, no, fight this. Appeal to the Senate. There must be. Seneca turned to her, taking both her hands in his. His eyes were infinitely gentle. My love, what would I fight for? A few more months? A few more years? I am 70 years old. I have lived a full life. I have written, taught, loved, and served. Every additional day would only be borrowed time. But this is unjust. Yes, Seneca agreed softly. It is completely unjust. And that is precisely why I must face it with justice. If I die with dignity, with courage, with philosophical grace, then I prove that Nero can take my life, but he cannot take my virtue. That remains mine until the very end. Death is not evil. It is natural and inevitable. What matters is not how long we live, but how well we live. A single day lived with virtue is worth more than decades lived without it. If you want more content like this, deep, meaningful stories that teach you how to live with courage and wisdom, then subscribe. Help this channel grow so we can keep creating this kind of content. Okay, let's continue with Seneca's final hours. Seneca did not rush to his death. Instead, he gathered his household, his servants, his friends, his students, everyone who had been with him through the years. They crowded into his atrium, many already weeping. Pompeia stood beside him, her hand gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. "My friends," Seneca began, his voice steady and clear, "I have received word from the emperor. My time has come to an end." The room erupted in wails and protests. "No, this cannot be. Master, please!" Seneca raised his hand for silence. "Please, please. This reaction is exactly what we have worked against all these years. Have I taught you nothing about death? Have all our philosophical discussions been mere words?" He moved through the crowd, making eye contact with each person. "Death is not a tragedy. It is a transition. It is as natural as birth. Every person in this room will face the same moment I face now. The only question is whether you will face it with fear or with courage." One of his younger students, tears streaming down his face, asked, "But Master, how can you be so calm? Doesn't this injustice make you angry?" Seneca smiled gently. "Anger? At what? At Nero? He is a slave to his own fears and passions. He acts according to his nature, just as a scorpion stings according to its nature. Should I be angry at a scorpion for being what it is? But you're innocent." "Perhaps, but innocence and guilt are legal concepts. They are external judgments. What matters is whether I have lived according to virtue. And that, my friend, is something no emperor can touch. Nero can take my property, my position, even my body. But my character, my choices, my philosophical practice, those remain entirely mine. External judgments cannot harm us. Only our own vice can corrupt us. If we maintain our virtue, we remain undefeated, regardless of what others do to us." Another friend spoke up. "But you could run, flee to the countryside. We would help you escape." Seneca shook his head. "And live as what? A fugitive? Always looking over my shoulder? Always in fear? No, my friend. That is not living. That is merely prolonging death. I choose to die on my own terms, practicing what I have always taught." He moved to the center of the room. "Besides, escape is an illusion. You cannot outrun death. It finds everyone eventually. The Stoic practice is not to avoid death, but to live so fully that when death comes, we can greet it as an old friend whose arrival we have been expecting." He paused, looking at each face. "I want you to remember this moment, not as a tragedy, but as a demonstration. When your own difficult moments come, and they will come, remember that you have the power to choose your response. You can panic, or you can practice philosophy. You can collapse into fear, or you can stand with dignity. Write this down," he said to one of his secretaries. "Let these words be preserved. While we teach, we learn. And while we live, we die. The wise person lives every day as though it were both their first and their last. The secretary's hand shook as he wrote, his tears falling onto the parchment. Seneca spent the next hour like this, teaching. Even at the edge of death, he was a philosopher first. He answered questions. He shared insights. He comforted those who were grieving. As the first hour drew to a close, Pompeia Paulina made an announcement that shocked everyone in the room. "I will die with my husband." Silence. Seneca turned to her, his expression suddenly vulnerable for the first time. "Paulina, no, you must not." "I will," she said firmly. "You have taught me about Stoicism for years, Lucius. Did you think I was merely listening? Did you think those lessons were just for you to practice? But you have many years ahead." "What years?" Her voice broke slightly but remained determined. "Years as a widow? Years of being interrogated by Nero's agents about my dead husband's conspiracy? Years of isolation and suspicion? No. If you face death, I face it with you. We are partners. We remain partners until the end." Seneca's eyes filled with tears, the first emotion beyond calm acceptance he had shown. "Paulina, do not deny me this," she said. "Do not deny me the right to practice the same philosophy you have lived. You taught me that love is not about possession or protection. It is about mutual respect and shared virtue. Let me show my virtue now." Here was a moment of profound tension. Seneca, the philosopher, believed in his teachings, but Seneca, the husband, did not want his wife to die. The two parts of him warred visibly on his face. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Your courage humbles me. If this is truly your choice, made freely and philosophically, then I honor it. We will face this together." He turned to the guard, who had been watching all of this with obvious discomfort. "Does the emperor's order extend to my wife?" The guard swallowed. "No, sir. Only to you." "Then what she does is her choice, not his order. You cannot stop her. She is a free Roman citizen, making a free choice." The guard nodded miserably. He had come here to witness one death. Now he would witness two. True love respects autonomy and virtue above comfort. The Stoic marriage is a partnership of souls dedicated to living philosophically, not a relationship of possession or dependence. Roman aristocratic suicide followed certain protocols. The most common method was to open the veins in a warm bath. The heat would encourage bleeding, and the person would gradually lose consciousness as their blood pressure dropped. It was considered relatively peaceful if done correctly. Seneca called for his physician, Lucius Annaeus. The man arrived with his medical kit, his face pale and drawn. "Statius," Seneca greeted him, "thank you for coming." "Master, The physician couldn't continue. He was being asked to kill the man he had served for decades. "I understand," Seneca said gently. "This is difficult, but it is also necessary. I need you to open my veins, here and here." He indicated his wrists and ankles, and Paulina's as well. Statius looked at Pompeia. "My lady, are you certain?" "I am," she said firmly. They moved to Seneca's bath. The servants had filled it with warm water. Seneca and Pompeia both removed their outer garments and reclined on adjacent couches, their hands finding each other. Before the cuts were made, Seneca spoke to everyone assembled. "I want you all to witness this, not because I seek glory or attention, but because this is a teaching moment. Watch how a Stoic dies. Watch how philosophy is lived until the final breath. Statius made the cuts. Quick, professional. The blood began to flow into basins prepared below. And then, nothing happened quickly. Seneca's body, weakened by age and years of simple living, did not bleed efficiently. His veins were too narrow, his blood pressure too low. What should have taken an hour took much longer. He lay there, waiting to die, while his blood dripped slowly into the basin. Time stretched out. The sun set completely. Lamps were lit. The household watched in growing horror as their master suffered not from pain, but from the sheer duration of the process. Even our best plans do not always unfold as we expect. The Stoic practice is to adapt to circumstances as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. As the second hour became the third, Seneca's condition deteriorated, but death still did not come. His hands grew cold, his breathing became labored, but consciousness remained. Pompeia, in a similar state, squeezed his hand weakly. "I'm here," she whispered, "still here." "As am I, my love," he whispered back. It was then that Statius suggested another method. "Master, perhaps poison? It would be faster." Seneca nodded weakly. "Yes, please." They prepared hemlock, the same poison that killed Socrates 4.5 centuries earlier. How fitting, Seneca thought, that he should die like his philosophical ancestor. He drank the poison. Still, death delayed. His body was too cold now, his circulation too slow. The poison could not distribute through his system effectively. Imagine this. You have accepted death. You have said your goodbyes. You have practiced your philosophy. And then death itself refuses to cooperate. You are trapped in a body that is dying but will not die. Many people would have panicked, would have screamed, would have cursed the gods or the emperor or fate itself. Seneca did not. Instead, he continued to teach. Between labored breaths, he spoke to those gathered. "Do you see? Do you see what I am showing you? Death is not clean, not simple, not poetic. It is messy and difficult and uncomfortable, but it is still just death, nothing more." Someone in the room wept loudly. Seneca turned his head toward the sound. "Please, do not weep for me. I am practicing what I have always taught. This is the culmination of a philosophical life, not a tragedy." "But you're suffering, Master." "Discomfort," Seneca corrected weakly, "not suffering. Suffering is a judgment we place on pain. I feel the sensations of dying, but I do not add the story that it should be different. It is what it is. Pain and discomfort are physical sensations. Suffering is the mental story we add to those sensations. The Stoic learns to experience discomfort without layering additional suffering on top of it. Finally, they moved Seneca to a steam bath. The logic was that the heat and moisture would speed up his circulation and help either the blood loss or the poison complete their work. They carried him, this great philosopher, this advisor to emperors, this man who had dined with the most powerful people in the world, and laid him in a small room filled with steam. Pompeia was beside him, barely conscious now. Through the steam, Seneca could barely see the faces of his household gathered at the door. He raised one hand slightly, a gesture of farewell. And then he spoke his final words, words that were recorded and preserved by the historian Tacitus. I offer this libation to Jupiter the Liberator, Jupiter the Liberator, the god of freedom. Even at the moment of death, Seneca made his philosophy clear. This was not defeat. This was liberation. Liberation from Nero's tyranny. Liberation from the compromises and guilt he had carried. Liberation from the body itself. Death was not the ending of freedom. Death was the ultimate freedom. Those were his last words. The steam, combined with the poison and blood loss, finally brought unconsciousness. Seneca's breathing slowed, then stopped. The great Stoic philosopher was dead. But Pompeia Paulina did not die. When word reached Nero that Seneca's wife was also taking her own life, the emperor panicked. He didn't want to be seen as the tyrant who drove a noble Roman couple to double suicide. It was too dramatic, too memorable. It would make him look like the villain of history. So Nero sent guards with orders. Save Pompeia Paulina. They arrived just in time. Her veins were bound. Her bleeding stopped. Physicians worked frantically to stabilize her. She survived. For years afterward, she lived in Rome, her wrists bearing the scars of that day. Some said she remained deliberately pale, never allowing color to return to her face, a living monument to her husband and a silent accusation against the emperor who killed him. She never remarried. She spent the rest of her life preserving Seneca's writings and ensuring his philosophical legacy endured. Think about what this means. Seneca died, but his philosophy survived. Nero took his life, but he could not take his teachings. The emperor's power proved temporary. The philosopher's ideas proved eternal. In the days after Seneca's death, Nero tried to erase him from history. He confiscated Seneca's property. He banned public mentions of his name. He wanted Rome to forget that the great Stoic had ever existed. It didn't work. Seneca's students had copied his writings. His letters were already circulating throughout the empire. His essays on Stoicism, on the shortness of life, on anger, on tranquility, they had spread beyond Rome, beyond Italy, across the Mediterranean world. You cannot kill an idea by killing the person who had it. Today, nearly 2,000 years later, Seneca's writings remain in print. His letters are studied in universities. His philosophy guides people facing their own difficulties. And Nero? He is remembered only as the tyrant who killed him. This is the power of virtue over force. This is the power of philosophy over politics. This is the power of choosing how you respond, even when you cannot control what happens to you. You are not facing execution by a mad emperor, but you are facing your own challenges. Maybe you're in a job you hate, but cannot leave yet. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult family member. Maybe you're facing illness, financial stress, or the slow decline of aging. Maybe you're trapped in circumstances that feel unbearable. Seneca's story tells you your response is always your own. You cannot control the economy, your boss's mood, your diagnosis, or what other people think of you. But you can control whether you face these difficulties with panic or with philosophy, with despair or with dignity, with bitterness or with grace. The Stoic practice is not about feeling nothing. It's about feeling everything while maintaining your center. It's about acknowledging difficulty while refusing to be destroyed by it. Seneca was terrified. He loved his wife. He did not want to die, but he did not let those feelings dictate his actions. He felt his emotions, acknowledged them, and then chose his response based on his values rather than his fears. That is the skill Stoicism teaches, not the elimination of difficulty, but the cultivation of virtue within difficulty. You made it to the end. If this story moved you, if these lessons resonated, if you felt something shift in how you think about your own challenges, then you owe it to yourself to subscribe to this channel. Because here's what I know. Most people will watch this video, feel inspired for about 20 minutes, and then forget everything. They'll go back to reacting to life instead of responding to it. They'll go back to letting external circumstances control their inner peace. But not you. You're different. You watch this video about ancient philosophy. You're seeking something deeper than entertainment. You're looking for wisdom that actually changes how you live. Subscribe, because you deserve to be the kind of person who faces their challenges with the same courage Seneca showed. And that transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens through repeated exposure to wisdom, through regular reminders of what matters, through building a practice over time. Seneca died 2,000 years ago. His body is dust. His estate is gone. His wealth means nothing. Even the Roman Empire that killed him has been extinct for 15 centuries. But today, you just spent some time learning from him. His ideas are alive in your mind right now. His courage is inspiring you right now. His philosophy is relevant to your life right now. That is immortality, not the immortality of the body, but the immortality of virtue and wisdom. Nero tried to silence Seneca. He failed. Every person who reads Seneca's words, who applies his philosophy, who faces their own challenges with stoic courage, they prove that Nero failed. You are part of that legacy now. You carry forward what Seneca taught. And when you face your own difficult moments with dignity and philosophical practice, you honor his final 3 hours. Death came for Seneca in that steam bath 2 millennia ago. But his teachings, they're immortal. They survived emperors and barbarians and the collapse of civilizations. They survived book burnings and the Dark Ages. They survived 2,000 years to reach you right now, in this moment. Use them well. Live so that when your own final hours come, whether that's tomorrow or in 50 years, you can face them with the same courage and philosophical grace that Seneca showed. That is the ultimate lesson, not how to die, but how to live so well that death becomes just another moment in a life of virtue. Thank you for watching. And remember, the Stoic path is not about avoiding difficulty. It's about maintaining your virtue in difficulty.